So I would say that the primary religious language, insofar as there is such a thing, it's something I tried to detail in Maps of Meaning, which is the first book I wrote. It's a very complicated book. But religious propositions are, in some sense, abstracted generalizations about what being consists of and how to act in it. It's not the same thing as a set of hypotheses about material reality. And it's partly because in the religious domain, the moral imperative is primary, whereas in the empirical domain, the factual domain is primary, or the sensory domain is primary, something like that. So the question from the religious perspective is something like, how should we best construe the world if we wish to determine how to act properly within it? And the way that language has developed, it's developed as a consequence of an evolutionary process, both biological and cultural. And it's culminated in a set of stories, essentially, that have characters. The characters basically represent something like the permanently unknowable. And so that's the mystery that surrounds us all. And that would be associated, say, with the potential of the future and the potential in you. The part of being that's transcendent, right, that constantly escapes from your theorizing. That's the unknown. It's like unexplored territory for animals. And it's a permanent part of being. So there's unexplored territory, the unknown, and there's explored territory, culture, the known, and that's this room, and that's the cultural mores that unite us well enough so that we can all sit here and be peaceful while we're discussing difficult things. So that's the landscape, the religious landscape. That's yin and yang. That's chaos and order. Interestingly enough, it looks like it's to that landscape that our brain has adapted, because the right hemisphere looks like it's roughly responsible for processing chaos and the unknown, and the left hemisphere roughly responsible for processing the known and the familiar. And that's on good evidence. If you don't want to take my word for it, you can read Ian McGilchrist's book, The Master and His Emissary, which is quite masterful treatment of the neuropsychological literature. And so that's the religious domain, yin and yang, chaos and order. And it places human beings at the center of that. And the idea is that we're always confronted by what we understand and have to adapt to that, even in its tyrannical manifestation. And we're always faced with the permanent reality of the permanently incomprehensible that can burst into our life at any moment and disrupt it. That's reality. And then the religious question is, if that's reality, how do you orient yourself in relationship to those two permanent domains? And the answer to that is something like, pursue the instinct of meaning. Because it looks like meaning is the instinctive response, neuropsychologically grounded in the orienting reflex, I would say, which is a very primordial reflex to the unknown. Meaning is the response that orients us in that world. And so when we're engaged in a meaningful enterprise, it's a signal from the deepest elements of our biological being that we have the balance between what we know and makes us secure and what we don't know and have yet to explore properly synced. And that makes us secure, but not totalitarian, and engaged, but not terrified. And by staying on that midpoint of balance, that's Tao, by the way, that's the way from the Taoist perspective. By staying on that midpoint, we do what's best for us, what's best for our families, what's best for our community, and God only knows beyond that. We do all of that simultaneously, and we can tell that we're doing that. It speaks to us when we're doing that. And that's the deepest of religious instincts. And it's that capability to orient on that border between chaos and order that's exemplified in great mythological heroes like St. George, who goes out to slay the dragon, or Christ, who welcomes death, who embraces mortality and vulnerability and strives forward nonetheless. And there's nothing outside of the religious language that communicates that kind of grandeur. There's nothing that you can use to communicate to people who are in the direst of straits what's most important about life in the manner that will help set them straight and put their soul at peace. So that's the advantage of the religious language.
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you both for a very